Right, I think we've started. Just to confirm that, yeah, I'm live. Okay. Right, let me just see here. Before I start out, I'm just gonna tweet that I'm actually streaming so that my entirety of my very, very tiny follower account will know that that's the thing that's happening. Okay, I wonder how you... I don't know how to actually get the link to this stream. I mean, I am public, advanced settings, so share, aha. Okay, so I've sent the tweet. Does it go through to my channel? Yeah, it does. Okay, so that's working. Right, well, this has been entertaining content, hasn't it? So what I was thinking I'd do, like, this is my first go at streaming myself coding. I don't really know what I'm doing as of yet. This might turn out to be, like, really boring, but yeah, hopefully I'll get better, so stick with it, the 0 people who are watching. So inspired by a few people, inspired by like Adam Wathan, who built Tailwind CSS, which is what I'm going to be experimenting with a bit, and I've used in a bunch of projects recently, and some other people that in sort of the Laravel community have been doing some live streaming recently, and it's an interesting way of sort of like seeing how people work. So I thought I'd have a go at it. So what I was thinking of doing, let me just actually bring up my desktop here, because you've currently just got my beautiful face as like the full screen, which now I've switched over to a really zoomed out terminal, so not sure what I can do about that, but stick with me and figure something out. Okay, so to begin with, I was thinking like start off with a fairly simple project, like a clone of something that already exists, like rebuild the UI using I was going to, as I mentioned, Tailwind CS. I was going to build something using that. Is like just if anyone's watching and if anyone's watching and they don't know, like Tailwind CSS is a utility framework / library. I'm not sure really sure where you draw the distinctions between the two. Different people draw into places. And so, like the normal way of working with CSS, you create elements and you give each of them a name or a class, to be more specific, and you assign different properties to those classes. So you build up what that specific element will look like. The problem being sometimes you get like what do you call things? If you've got a like a card with an excerpt from a blog post, do you call it like blog excerpts? Well, what if you use that same style for something else? Is it then still like you call it? Do you duplicate that styling code elsewhere? In which case, you've got these two different versions of the same visual representation of something that live in different places and could diverge from one another, or just like increase the size of your file, or do you end up sort of like coming up with another name for it, which may or may not be like good? Like, what if you call it card, but what if that then like the visual style stops being a card? So there's been this movement recently in a few frameworks to sort of like start creating utilities that you just sort of stack on within the HTML. So rather than giving everything a name, you just compose it out of utilities, and you only extract them into a component if later on, if you feel you need to. Like, other people explain this better than me. Other people more experienced in explaining these things than me, but this is my first go at it. So I was going to recreate an existing project using it. Thought it would be a fun way to spend the next hour. Probably will be an hour that this caps out as, given it's my first stream and I don't want to bore people. Not again that there's anybody watching, and I'm getting confused by where my mouse is, whether my mouse is in like I've got a second monitor that I'm viewing my own stream in, and I thought I was moving my mouse around on that when I'm moving, as opposed to my actual monitor. So what I was thinking of doing, if I just bring a browser window into view. People, is this visible? Yeah, so here we go. So there is a web app that I use, which is called WaniKani, which is like, basically it is for like, I am learning Japanese and have been for almost 10 years now. No comment on my progress in that. It's been like stop-starty recently, but it is like a spaced repetition, which like basically means you I have completely lost my train of thought there. So basically means you kind of like I am sorry. Alright, so spaced repetition software is where there's like the science which says like your brain sort of like holds on to new concepts for a certain amount of time, and the best time to like refresh them is when you're just about to forget them. So it's like a flashcard kind of system that like introduces something to you, and then you have a certain time period, and then it asks you to review it, and then another time period and asks you to renew it. And then eventually you get to the point where those time periods get longer and longer and longer until it deems you to have learned it and not really need to review it again. So you have like, there are various like elements within these levels, but you have 4 different tiers of like having remembered things, and then finally it's like you have completed this item. So these numbers represent the number of things that I have kind of going through something. Again, this is my first time, so I'm sorry I'm not being all professional media person-y about this. I do hope I will get better, and certainly more prepared, but this is more an experiment of seeing whether people like follow along with this. So, what am I talking about? I'm getting confused again. I've got right, okay. So anyway, this isn't really what you came to me for. If you did come to me at all. So I'm going to be rebuilding this UI, or that's the plan, or I'm going to see how far I get doing that in Tailwind for the next, what is now 50 minutes. There are a few elements to it. There's a nav bar that has like status of various things that you have done. I've got the like, so you got, oh, you don't mind. There are some circles, and some of those circles have some text in them, and then they have a drop down and various things like that. You can't see because my face is in the way, but if I drag this over here, I don't know why it's not appearing, but you do like have a profile picture there. Let's inspect element on this, see why it's not appearing, because it should be a lovely photo of me. Or whether or not it's lovely is kind of up to whether you think I look lovely. Okay, looks like they're having. Looks like Gravatar is having some issue with this, with their CDN 503 error from Gravatar. It's interesting. I say interesting. It's neither here nor there, really, I guess. So you have, and then you have these boxes with like different colored backgrounds. There is a shadow around each of them as well. There's a sense of depth to them. You've got various grey panels with various items in them. Got like items from the chat software, and then you have news, which literally just links off to the blog. I don't know if there's ever been news within that, but it goes off to Tumblr at the moment, so that's something. And then you've got a footer, and then you've got this. You've got a lot of interesting artwork actually. You've got this down the footer. Their homepage is also like really nice looking in terms of the artwork. That's obviously not something we're going to be trying to recapture in this, but what I was going to do is basically take the structure of the UI and see how much of it I could recreate using utility classes from Tailwind in the course of this streaming session, and then hopefully I'll come back to it in a future session. So let's get started. Start with, I will just have to, like, I think what I'm just going to do is start a new Laravel application, and that gets me sort of like, Mix is what I'd be using for compiling all of my assets anyway, because who can be bothered to set Webpack up? Right, so Laravel new, like, let's just call it one. Alright, I'm going to call it WaniKani. Amazing content, me doing installation. Right, well that's doing its thing. Let me see how we're going. Alright, nobody's watching. I don't think that anyone would be watching anyway, but yeah. Alright, cool, we're installed. Alright, let's cd into the directory. Alright, and do an npm install. Yeah, do npm install first. It's going to be a session of lots of waiting for things to download. By the way, I'm sorry if there's any noise that's being picked up in the background. There is DIY going on in the house. Alright, that's installed. And I'm also going to have to actually install Tailwind. Ooh, I have an NPM update available. I probably won't do that at the moment. Alright, so what next? Let's commit, shall we? Alright, so that's the first commit done. Alright. And alright, so the next thing I have to do is to actually get the Tailwind config file published and set up Mix to compile it. So let me just check the documentation. This is one day I will have this memorized hopefully, but in the meantime it's cut and paste. Right, so node modules bin Tailwind init. Paste that into the terminal. And I don't know if I did not open it properly in the Sublime. What did I have open the last time? I don't know. Alright, so I have a config file, which is good, and then I need to go into my Webpack mix.js. Remove Sass. Alright, let's import Tailwind. Right, what are we going to call our CSS file? Like, the convention seems to be to go with main.css. So I will do that. Public CSS. Where is it? Just trying to find the. Right, okay, so that's what we've got to do. It's post CSS, not CSS. No, you're missing out on the window I've got open with the documentation on. Right. Okay. So paste this in. Right. So that's not where it lives. It's just tailwind.js. That's that installed, and then I just need to make sure that I have the correct assets. It would help if it was actually in the right file. So at the moment I have like the default Sass, the stuff set up that Laravel provides. I'm just going to delete this, I think. New file, assets. Assets, CSS, main.css, and then we will import or paste in the default setup. Alright, So now if I ran Laravel mix to watch my files, that should work. So npm run watch. This should work. No, what have I done wrong? Dependency was not found. In admin assets JS main.c. Ah, that's what I did. I didn't change the name of the directory. Right. Now let's have another go. Yes, so we've compiled that. All right. I'm going to come out and I'm going to commit it now. So before I do, I'm just going to run this for production because, like, it's the thing. I tend to try and make sure that the only versions of all my sort of assets that get committed are the versions that are minified and ready for production. And already app.js is showing up as being big. There's not anything. Oh, it's whatever the default is, I guess. So, alright, so git know what I've changed. I'm just going to do git add all. Install Tailwind CSS. I was about to push that, but obviously I've not set up anywhere for it to be hosted. Alright, so we are pretty much ready to go, I guess. So at the moment, like if I do I'm running darn. It's not secure. It's Alright, so I'm running Laravel Valet for like my local server, so I can get this secured easily enough. This Chrome update is driving me crazy. Might have to switch over to something else at some point, but at the moment I've been lazy and stuck with .dev. So secure. What's the command for secure? Alright, Valet secure. I should pronounce it the upper class British way, Valet secure. This is fun, isn't it? More waiting. Right, I just realised that I've been I tried to visit it on my other monitor, so no one could actually see that. I'm sorry about that. Alright, we're done. And if I try visiting it now. Get to see some of my most frequently visited sites there, and some boring links. This is doing something. Hey, it succeeded. And we have like the default Laravel splash page, which we're going to get rid of now. Right, so if I go into my web directory, so root, the root returns a view called welcome. I was going to clean this up. I'm not going to. I'm just going to call this dashboard. Dashboard. Like I have a tendency now that there's like the new like root : view to simplify it to that, because I like my routes file. My roots file. I'm British. I should say roots rather than routes. But I'm used to hearing other people talking, saying routes, and for some reason I did that. And now I have cleaned it up. So like wherever possible now, I like to use like just a root view because it feels cleaner to me. So that exists now, and then I would go into resources, views. I'll delete the standard welcome page and Alright, and then so you've got basic HTML skeleton. WaniKani dashboard clone is the title. Alright, style sheet. Asset. No, I don't need to care about JavaScript yet. Okay, so that's the only thing we're requiring. Let's just get some. Let's get hello world in there. Now let's see what happens. This is quite slow. Whoops. Too many. I see what I did there. Alright, so that was me trying to be clever and ended up being stupid. Alright, so we have it. And so I've got that in there. Just to check that the CSS is all okay. Right, so if I make this an H1, and should we say so say text green. Ah, there we go. So yeah, we've got CSS set up. Now, where do we start? Now that we've got things working. Alright, so guess the first thing you've got to do is think about like what the container is. Alright, so if I add a container to this div class, like so. Tailwind doesn't Tailwind comes with a container class, but what it doesn't do is like center that container. So I've also got to stick mx auto on there. And refresh the right thing. Should not have gone with something so slow. I'll have to take a look into why this is slow. It's not normally on my machine, but I guess I'm not normally streaming, so there's a thing. Alright, so let's see how these compare. Like, we're pretty much in the same territory for the container. So I think we're good for that. So I don't need to adjust that very much. Or I don't need to adjust that at all, to be honest. Right, so I'm going to skip the nav bar for now. Oh, my gravatar has reappeared. Woo! I'm going to skip the nav bar for now. I'm going to focus on this area. So like 3 columns with some text in them. Right, so what we need to do is... Alright, so keep this in this container. And... Alright, so div... If I put a class of flex on it, it will basically set it as display flex. And then I can add these items there. So it's like W1/3 will create a div that is 1/3 of the width. So 1, 2, 3. The wrong place. I don't know why I'm refreshing this. You're not going to be able to see anything. It's 3 empty divs. A, B, A, B, C. Alright, slow times again. Well, wait, is anybody actually watching? Nope, apart from myself. Yeah, so there we go. We have A, we have B, and we have C. And if I pop a text center as well, I like to keep these classes alphabetized just so it's like predictable where things will be. Other people don't care about that stuff necessarily, but I'm a bit anal with it. So refresh. There we go, and we're good. Alright, so ABC, that works. So I need to replace them with some real content. So we've got this available now. Available now 2 and 93. Those represent like my actual stats, by the way. So like available now. Right, I'm just going to stick them in divs. I might check what they actually use at some point, but for now I'm just going to stick them in divs. I don't know why I'm refreshing this. It's not going to look different. And then next review, next hour, next day. Next review, next hour, next day. And let's refresh this time. What's going on here? It's all over the place suddenly. I did not close those divs. I've got 2 div tags that are meant to be closing div tags, but they're actually additional opening div tags. This should fix it. At some point. Yay! Alright, so what's the next step? So I guess we also need to sort out the font. Alright, so this is a time. Time ago. That's interesting. I've never actually used the time element. I guess that makes sense. Alright, so I'm getting sidetracked by this. So this is the font stack that they use. So I'm going to see what's on the next one. Okay, so this bottom line isn't selectable. So that's just a child of the list item. Alright, so open sans / Helvetica. So, like, if I go into the config file for Tail, normally what you have in here is, for fonts, is you have like a font stack for sans, a font stack for serif, and a font stack for mono. Now, if that's not what they're doing, I have to come up with my own alternative to it. So I guess what we need to figure out is like what these represent. You know, I'm going to keep font sans as being this because that seems to be what's used more frequently. So open sans is the first one. All right, so let me see. Open sans, Helvetica new, and so on. All right, so let's make it consistent. I'm sure there's an easier way to convert what sort of quotations you're using, but I'm not sure what it is. Right. Alright, so sans is that. Do I keep it as sans? Yeah, let's keep it as sans. And then add into it. What should I call it? Sans 2, The Revenge of Sans. Sans emphasis. Like, I don't like any of the. I'd sort of be tempted to go with like primary and secondary, but I don't know whether that's gonna like. I don't know whether that sort of semantic naming is gonna just come and bite me on the ass. So I'm gonna go with sans emphasis, which is still semantic, but it feels more like it feels clearer what the purpose is. I'm not a big fan of like I've had a few projects where developers have called all the colors like color primary, color secondary, and so on in usually in SAS files. And the thing I find is that when I'm coming to it, maybe not having worked on the project before, you have like it's very difficult to tell what's what unless your code editor is showing you the color, which my setup with Sublime Text at the moment doesn't. You come and say, well, what's primary? There is, unless the design clearly has a primary color or a primary font, you don't know necessarily which one's which. And I find that to be time consuming to figure out sometimes, depending on how things are set up. Alright, so I've got these two fonts set up, so has my I am not running in npm watch anymore, so that is something I would need to do. Hey, and we are running. Refresh. I don't know why I'm refreshing this. I haven't put anything on anything. Alright, so dashboard blade PHP. Okay, so and all of these can have a class of font sans emphasis. I'm just going to stick font sans on the body. And let's see how it goes. Right, so those fonts have shown up. It's difficult to tell because the font weight on there, but they are different. So I guess we figure out what size these need to be and what color they need to be actually. Okay, so what size is it? So they've got 36 pixels. Like Tailwind uses rems, so let's figure out what the closest would be to that. Font size, text size. Text sizing. I'm just searching the documentation at the moment. Again, I've got it open on another window. So, right, so that maps to class called text for Excel. Text center, text for Excel. Monitor again. Yeah, so it's bigger, and now we need to figure out what the weight needs to be. Right, so they've got, what font weight have they got? Font weight bold. Okay, that's helpful. So we have a font bold class which represents, like, Tailwind has a scale of font weights ranging from 100 to 900, so it's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. You know where I'm going with this. Random thought. Does font weight 1 exist? Why is the scale 100 to 900? Does that mean anything? If anyone has the answer to that, please let me know. Right, so font bold anyway. Font bold. Font bold, and then let's open this up again. Yeah, so that worked. Yay. And if we get the font size on the item below as well. I'm going to have to do some spacing of it as well, but let's start with the font size. So it's the list item that we need to style. And what is the font weight on that? Or what is the font size first? Font size, font size, font size. Let's get it computed. Font size 14 pixels. So text size 14 pixels. So that's text small or text SM. Text SM. Did I save that? Hey, and there we go. Right, so for my next trick, let's get this. Is that that's right? Okay, so I'm not gonna do the icons yet, although I'm sure there are icon time. Is that? Oh, okay, so they're just font awesome icons. So I could just bring in font awesome, and that should work. But I'm not gonna do them yet. What I will do instead is get some of the colouring right, and as well as the margin between this first half, the time ago, or whatever. Okay, so this is a time, and then the rest of them are spans, because this is the only one that represents a time. And like, it doesn't make sense when it says available now, but depending on what your current status is, whether you've got items that are available to review at the moment, or whether you will do in the future, it may say items available in an hour, items available in 2 hours, and so on. So having it as a time does make sense. So let's see what we are doing. So let's margin bottom is 18 pixels. So let's see. Spacing in the documentation. So we're gonna want to give the first line of text margin bottom, which is MB dash something, and typekit has not typekit. What am I talking about? Tailwind has a scale in rems going from margin 0 to margin 8, which is 2 rems. So like one in their scale represents a quarter of a rem. So I do not have a mental model of how rems and pixels work out. I have to confess I've only recently started using rems for anything I build, so this is kind of new to me. So I'm just going to start experimenting and see where we get to. Alright, so MB1. Again, this is so slow. Alright, so that... Alright, so start off with, that looks to me like a little under half the way that we need to be. So if I try it MB2, like, I'm not necessarily looking for this to be perfect at the moment, so if it gets us pretty much there, I might call it a day with that bit. No, I don't feel like it does get us there, actually. I might be completely off the mark with it being double. Okay, so computed. Why is this not? Why is nothing showing up? There we go. So computed. Right, 8 pixels. So I was completely off the mark. It is basically quarter. So we need MB4 to have it the equivalent of 16 pixels. And if we refresh now, yeah, we're there. Right, before I launch into the colors, the available now item has like the question mark cursor appear when you hover over it. So let's see how we can do that. Cursor customizing, cursor responsive hover focus. Oh, that's not. We need cursor pointer, cursor not allowed. Okay, so let's. So it's not got the question mark, which is. I'm just going to double check what the CSS does with that. So cursor. Cursor help. Alright, so I'm going to go into my config files. Cursor responsive. So there's not a cursor config then. Main CSS. Let's open that up. Right, so resources, assets, CSS, main CSS. So I'm just going to create my own cursor help, and then that will do the job for us. Wait for it to compile. So that's done. Right. Now let's see what we get. I don't see any reason why this shouldn't work. Although it will be slow about it. Okay. Yeah, that worked. It's interesting that there's not a config file for that. Right, so that's that. So let's do colour. We've got 5 minutes left for how long I was planning on doing this stream. So let's have a look at the colour. Right, so grey we've got is 555. And if we go into Tailwind JS and colors, background colors, border colors, text colors. Right, so I just want the color section. So grey. We've got a series of greys from darker, dark, and so on. Like, I don't want to get rid of them, but also none of them are really where I need. I guess grey darker is the closest in terms of like the colour of it. So if I update that to use 555. That did compile, didn't it? Oh, let's find out. Right, while we're waiting, isn't it? Main CSS. So yeah, it did. Again. Am I back online? No, I'm not back online. Oh, yeah, I'm back online. Right, okay. Right, so I've got text grey darker on all of those. Gonna remove them from here and here. Actually, to be fair, I could move them up the chain. There's no reason that it needs to be on there. I'm going to stick with it as is for the moment, just for the sake of finishing this up. Alright, we're done. Right, well, I was going to... my aim was to get, like, this section finished by the time I got to the end of the stream, but unfortunately... Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm offline again. What is going on? Right. It's back online, I think, but with poor connection.